We have already broken down some top offensive free agent targets for the Dallas Cowboys. Now we're breaking down defensive targets. Once again, I'm going 30 players that stand out to me as, not the most expensive, still kind of expensive to an extent. Some cheaper options, some guys I think could fit in the end. So which side of the ball do you think gets more additions during free agency? Just pure volume of outside players signed. O for offense, D for defense. Let me know, in the comment section of today's show. Milton Williams, Khalil Mack, Josh Sweat, Zach Bond, DJ Reed, Byron Murphy, those types of guys I think are probably going to be too expensive. And they're just going to be a little bit out of the Cowboys' preferred price range. Maybe someone like Mack isn't as expensive because he's old, but he's still playing at a pretty high level. I think those guys are going to get too much for the Cowboys' self-imposed budget. The area I am most intrigued by this offseason is the defensive tackle spot. You got Mozzie Smith. Okay, that's one guy that'll be on your team come week one, and giant question marks at the other 4 spots. You're going to roster defensive line. And if you lose Osa, you got to sign, I believe, multiple defensive linemen. In fact, I want to sign 2 if we include Osa or not. It's 1 with Osa, 2 without. So first up on my list is Javon Kinlaw. I think there are connections here. Aaron Whitecotton, his D-line coach in New York, is his D-line coach would be his D-line coach in Dallas. Had his best year ever with the Jets under Aaron Whitecotton. His frame, that 6'6" frame, fits pretty well with what at times Flus has liked in the past. If you lose Osa, from a cost perspective, it'd be like a fraction of it. That name stands out to me. B.J. Hill, the Bengals defensive lineman, has been a long-time player. There's a non-zero chance that the Bengals throw money at Osa and you just sign B.J. Hill and kind of swap defensive linemen. Not as good this past year. Maybe wasn't deployed quite the way he had been in years past, but he had a pretty big fall-off in sacks and quarterback hits as the Bengals' defense in general was really bad. But as a buy low veteran option, and you draft a young guy early, could make some sense. Levi Onwuzurike, the Lions defensive lineman. Again, there's had some injury stuff in the past that caused some issues in terms of being able to play, but he showed some good stuff down the stretch this past year, and that intrigues me. He's not going to be an elite sack getter, but I need a nose guard, and I need a 3 technique. And my ideal nose guard, and has been this way for 3 years now, really longer than 3 years, Poona for the Chargers. He's a founding target of Fatties Only. When we first did that stuff, I'm like, bring me Poona forward. He's not a liability against the pass. He's kind of in that cheap journeyman stage, even though he always produces pretty well. I think he's one of those undervalued players by the NFL that stand out to me. Would I rather, for example, I thought about this a lot. I'm the meme of, I'm laying in bed with the wife and she's thinking about, he's thinking about other women. It's like, would I rather have Osa or Poona Ford, like a Javon Kinlaw or a Hill or something, or a Javon Hargrave, and a linebacker? Like, that's what I think about at night. So how many defensive tackles do you want to sign in free agency? I think it's 2. And I want to draft somebody as well. Let me know in the pinned comments of today's show, especially the ad comes here on YouTube. DJ Jones, the Broncos defensive lineman. Again, a guy we've discussed in years past. I'm not looking at Milton Williams because I think he's going to be too expensive, like I mentioned. Jones has played for the Niners, then was in Denver. Didn't quite put up the same level of production as he did in San Francisco, but there's the Aaron Whitecotton connection with DJ Jones again. So I think that one is also worth mentioning too. Some under-the-radar names that aren't as big of household options. Bobby Brown III from the Rams, who the Cowboys had some semblance of draft interest in a couple years ago. Didn't work out timing-wise. It's a run stopper. He's 6'4", 324. Big boy. Can take on some 2-gap stuff. Can do the A-gap. Gives you, Mozzie Smith insurance. It thought is a better player right now. Byron Cowart of the Bears. Another Matt Eberflus connection here. He had his best year ever after kind of being okay-ish. In New England, had a couple sacks, couple TFLs, as like he might be more of like a backup 3 technique, but again, that's a piece along your defensive line. Calais Campbell is, I don't know how he does it. He's old. Like, Calais Campbell should not be able to be performing at the level he continues to produce at. He still gets TFLs. He still gets sacks. He's 38 years old. He's 3 years younger than his head coach was this past year. He was a 2008 draft pick, and he's still putting up 12 TFLs and 5 sacks a season. I am very impressed by how he keeps finding ways to stay around. I think he's a great locker room guy, too. It's a 1-year deal. Maybe he wants to stick in Miami or go to a true contender, but that stands out to me because he hasn't really slowed down yet. At some point he will, but it's not there yet. Jarran Reed, the Seahawks defensive tackle, is next up here on this list. Again, I think this is a solid piece. Not a superstar piece, but it gives you stability. And then you can still draft somebody. 4.5 sacks, 5 TFLs. Pretty consistent with what he's done over the course of his career, too. Another under-the-radar name is Sebastian Joseph Day. And he's done a lot of 3-4 defense stuff in recent years. I think he can still make that work in the end. This is a dirty work guy. He's not going to put up big-time numbers. He's not going to get you 5 sacks a year. He'll get you a couple, but he'll be a good run stopper for you. I think you need better run stoppers on the interior. So name a free agent, we'll say defense here, who you want to sign. Let me know in the comment section of today's show. The Cowboys once, I wasn't surprised by it because they had their size stuff. They drafted Kelvin Joseph once over Asante Samuel. They can now fix that mistake. Now, I'm curious what Samuel's market looks like. Coming off an injury-plagued season, only played a couple games, has been a little bit more inconsistent than what I'd like. There's been some good games and some bad games out of Asante Samuel. But if you want to maybe get him cheaper, because I think you're looking cheap at corner with what you have on the roster and some of the injury stuff and Trayvon Diggs being healthy and whatnot, I think Samuel is a upper echelon contract option for you. You could always simply bring back an old friend in Stephon Gilmore, who I think will once again be on that 1-year kind of journeyman contract stuff. That's what he's been doing. Carolina, Indy, Dallas, Minnesota, still serviceable. I don't think he's a superstar. He's not the defensive player of the year that he once was. But if he wants to come be a cheap stopgap this time around, maybe a reunion could make some sense. Jonathan Jones, the Patriots corner. Again, I'm looking buy low here because I'm going to spend my available money elsewhere. Kind of wasn't as good this year. And I do get a little bit worried in general about corners who look awesome with Bill Belichick and then kind of struggle without him. That's a red flag for me. And from 4 interceptions to 0 the past 2 years. He's got some inside-outside flex that I do value. Travarius Ward, the former Cowboy legend, under-the-radar all-time bad trade. They traded him for a backup Parker Ersinger, however you pronounce his last name, and didn't play a snap for him. Was a disaster. Had a lot of unfortunate stuff going on personal-wise. Lost his daughter. It was not good. Just tragic incident there. Sounds like he just doesn't want to go back to San Francisco, kind of wants to move and get a fresh start there. Maybe come back to Dallas could be an option for him. Money's going to be the question mark there. And then I said, why not put in one more old friend? You guys remember Michael Jackson? Not the singer. The Hurricanes corner who the Cowboys spent like a 5th-round pick on. He started for Carolina last season. He had 17 pass breakups, 2 interceptions, 76 tackles. Also high tackle numbers for a corner. I mean, he got beat a lot in coverage. But as like a cheaper stopgap option, who I think is less expensive than like a Rasul Douglas or something, Jackson stands out. Let's go to linebackers here. I'm still hopeful about DeMarvin Overshown long term, but I can't trust him to start, especially week 1. I like Maurice Liufau. It's going to be nickel heavy under Eberflus. I need another week 1 starter. Now, Nick Bolton would be a multi-year starter for me. I like his game. I like him as a run stopper. I think he flies around to the football. He'll get in the backfield. He's not the best in coverage. That's okay. I've got a good coverage linebacker and Overshown, and even Liufau flashed some decent things there. But he's expensive, and more than what the Cowboys have paid in the past. I am very curious what the market looks like for Dre Greenlaw. I love him. He was awesome in 2023. In fact, if he does not get hurt, the Niners might have won that Super Bowl that year. That was a massive loss for them. He is a tackling machine who's good in coverage, good instincts, barely played this season. He'll probably take a 1-year deal. The question is how much. Now, Robert Spillane also has a non-household name. Probably won't be overly expensive. You could probably get him on a 2 or 3 year deal for $5 or $6 million per year. And he kind of put up low-key, underrated numbers. good TFL numbers, good pass breakup numbers. He's bounced around. I kind of thought he was much better in Vegas than he was in Pittsburgh. I'll give him credit for that. I thought he took a step forward. He could be an under-the-radar option for you. Tyrell Dodson. Now, this is kind of more of a weak side linebacker than a middle linebacker, and you got to figure out what you want in your middle linebacker if you think it's Leofau, Overshown, or what. Played for both the Seahawks and the Dolphins last year. He didn't fit what Seattle was trying to do. I think that was just the GM and head coach weren't on the same page yet of what they wanted skill-wise. Was fine in Miami, though, and was really intriguing in Buffalo, too. Again, buy low options here. And then there is another Matt Eberflus connection. That is E.J. Speed, the Colts linebacker, who has, this is the type of, career statistics you normally want to see. Okay, he's kind of doing some stuff for me in 2021 after, kind of being a little bit slower to start his career and the stats and everything. He was there in 2019, by the way, with Flus. Then kind of doubles those tackle numbers in 2022, and then doesn't quite, but kind of almost doubles them again in 2023, and then has 142 this past season. And he's gone from a player that was a special teamer that wasn't really contributing, was kind of just a pure backup to, he's a starter. And I think clearly fits what Flus wants. He's 6'4", 227. He was, 7 tackles his first year. Now he's at 142. He's on the right side of 30 for now, at least. Could be an option for you. And we'll have more Cowboys free agency coverage. Updates, news, rumors, signings. We'll be live for free agency too. Hit that sub button so you don't miss out. YouTube.com/CowboysTV. I want to mention Edge too. You have Micah. You'll get Sam Williams back healthy. Fingers crossed. You have Marshawn Kneeland. That's not enough. You need to re-sign or go sign somebody else. I doubt they'll spend big money here because they're already paying Micah big money. But Hassan Reddick is not going to be expensive now. He's going to be cheaper than what he would have been if he just signed the contract extension the first time around. He kind of messed that one up. He was not good this year because you can't miss half a year, calendar year, for it to be good again. You might be able to buy low on him, though. Who I liked him a lot in Carolina, in Arizona, in Philadelphia. I am willing to try that one again in the end. Baron Browning is next up here. That is the Broncos edge rusher who was also a Cardinals edge rusher as well. Kind of got traded. I should have said Cardinals on that front. That's my fault. He was better in 2022, 2023 as a what I tend to call a disruptor. That was a disruptor option for the Broncos of being able to get pressures and generate some success and have an impact, not so much in the stat sheet with sacks, but in the impact. You felt his presence out there on that side of the ball. All right, Dante Fowler, the edge for the Commanders. An old friend again. He'll be a free agent coming off a career year in Washington. Finished a bit more frequently than what he had in the past. In the past. 10.5 sacks. I still don't think he's going to be overly expensive because he's kind of been on that journeyman contract the past couple seasons. Something tells me he just wants to, go get paid as best as possible. That might not end up being with the Dallas Cowboys in the end. But if you want that mercenary edge, I still think he kind of fits that mold. I think that's valuable there. All right, Matthew Judon, the edge from the Falcons, is next up here. He, frankly, wasn't good. I don't really know how else to describe what just happened this past year for Matthew Judon. He had 10.5 sacks, or 5.5 sacks, 4 sacks after 15 back in 2022 and 4 sacks in 4 games. His play, frankly, fell off a cliff. I don't really know how that happened, to be honest. I don't understand how he regressed so significantly on that side of the ball. And at this age, that's a pretty big concern for me. And it may or may not improve as he moves forward. And then there's Kayvon Chasen, the edge, most recently of the Raiders. He's also bounced around a variety of teams. I put him on here, as we have in years past, because that was a player the Cowboys liked a lot coming out. Remember, it was down between him and CeeDee Lamb. Now, he put up better numbers this past year with the Raiders. He had 5 sacks after 4 combined his previous 2 seasons. That is not something that I would necessarily overlook. And maybe you think he's finally kind of hitting his peak, hitting his prime a little bit, and kind of getting more to the guy I thought he could be coming out of LSU. It is also worth mentioning he's still pretty young. I think he turns 26 in July. I think that's his age. That's noteworthy to me. What is your biggest need on defense? For me, it's defensive tackle. But what do you think is the Cowboys' single biggest need? Let me know in the comment section of today's show. Safety. This would require you to make moves away from other players. Because right now, you don't need a safety. You have Malik Hooker. You have Donovan Wilson. You have Wayne Thomas on an exclusive rights deal. You have Marquise Bell there as well. You don't have to go get a safety. But if you're cutting Hooker or Wilson, then you got some money to go play with there. Javon Holland very much didn't have the year that I think anyone thought he was going to. He kind of struggled, frankly, this past season. His numbers went down. His overall play, even beyond the stat sheet, very much went down. And that's a concern for me in the end. But might make it more affordable than it would have been, this time last year. Trayvon Merrick is next up. I wanted him coming out of TCU. I was hoping they were going to take him over Kelvin Joseph. They got sniped by the Raiders. Kind of has steadily shown, I think, growth over the course of his career. He had a big uptick in production really the past 2 seasons. Talented player, I believe. I think fits the free safety. If you cut Malik Hooker, I am very intrigued by what you potentially have in the back end if the money works out. Which again, it may not, especially at safety. They're pretty cheap there. That's why I don't think Hufunga is going to be a fit for them. All right, next up is Justin Simmons, the Falcons' safety. He also wasn't as good this past year. He kind of took a step back. The entire Falcons defense had some issues, so that might not be just the Simmons thing. But the first year hasn't had at least 3 interceptions, by the way, too. Tackles went down slightly, but I'm not really overly concerned there. Tackles. He's getting up there in age, though. But again, as a veteran, reliable piece, draft someone else, or groom Wayne Thomas some more, stands out. Now, we originally had Elijah Molden on this list, but then the Chargers re-signed him. So we're going to replace him with Juan Thornhill, who was actually cut on Monday by the Cleveland Browns, an old draft crush, likely would be pretty cheap. Again, a lot of these names are under the assumption the Cowboys move on from one of Malik Hooker or Donovan Wilson. And finally, there's Quandre Diggs, who has been linked to the Cowboys in years past. He's kind of become a bit of a journeyman. He's at that stage of his NFL career. Could probably still do some nickel stuff if you needed him to as well. I wouldn't get my hopes up, speaking as a person who likes to add safety talent, unless the Cowboys move on from one of Malik Hooker or Donovan Wilson, however.